The story begins with a group of monkeys gathers for an important event near the ancient sacred tree, performing a ritual dance to welcome King Simeon, because this day is special since the queen is about to give birth to the king's heir. After a while, the royal counselor Vladimir, who helps deliver the babies, tells Simeon that 2 sons are born. Then he leads the king to the inner chambers, where Simeon sees a healthy and strong baby boy, and he proudly names him Vanya because the child appears powerful and lively, even striking his father's nose with surprising force, which makes it clear that he carries the same bold spirit as the king himself. However, Vladimir then explains that this child is actually the second-born and that the firstborn is smaller and weaker, which according to family customs will become the future king. The king gets disappointed looking at his tiny and weak son. The witch strongly advises that the weak infant should be removed immediately for the safety of the tribe. And although the decision is painful, the king orders Vladimir to throw the tiny baby. After Vladimir leaves to fulfill the order, Simeon stays behind with his exhausted wife, who asks about her second child, and he sadly tells her that the baby does not survive, which fills her heart with grief. And soon after, overwhelmed by sorrow, she takes her final breath and passes away. At the edge of a high branch, Vladimir attempts to drop the helpless infant into the predator's jaws, yet the baby clings tightly to his finger and reaches toward him with trust, which softens the counselor's heart and makes him reconsider his duty. However, the fierce growl of the grieving king echoes nearby and reminds Vladimir of his command, and so the baby falls from the branch. But his tiny and light body surprisingly becomes an advantage because the leaves soften his fall and a hanging vine catches him, leaving him swinging safely above the ground. The wolf quickly grabs the vine in an attempt to reach the child, unaware that it risks its own balance, and when the innocent baby stretches his arms forward again, the wolf bites down on his right hand, causing the child to scream in pain, yet the predator loses its grip and falls. While this happens, Vanya is proudly presented to the tribe, and the monkeys celebrate joyfully with dancing and cheers as they welcome their strong future king. At the same time, a large and rather slow-witted but kind male monkey named Ian discovers the injured baby hanging from a vine and gently frees him. Although Ian plans to leave and continue his own activities, he soon realizes that the baby cannot even move properly because of his injured arm. And when the child cries and insists on staying with him, Ian feels unable to resist and decides to protect him, eventually naming the small foundling Edward. 2 years pass, and Edward grows older. One day, Edward searches hungrily for his hidden fruit supply, only to discover that it is gone, and he quickly blames Ian for eating everything again, although the true thief turns out to be a small rat trying to escape with the stolen fruit. Edward attempts to chase the creature, but because of his weak arm, he cannot grip the branches properly, and he falls onto his back, where he suddenly notices a bird's nest and begins thinking quickly, which leads him to invent a clever trap using sticks and sticky tree resin that Ian blows out through a hollow stem to form a large bubble that can help capture prey. Their work is suddenly interrupted by the loud sound of a horn announcing the start of a cocoa ball match, which Edward loves very much, although Ian feels nervous about attending because they live apart from the tribe and often face teasing for being different. Determined not to miss the final game, Edward threatens to jump from a branch, forcing Ian to catch him mid-air and finally agree to go together. When they reach the arena, they sit on a branch overlooking the game, where monkeys swing from vines and compete to throw coconuts into the mouth of a giant skull faster than their opponents. Vanya, now strong and confident, performs an impressive leap and scores beautifully, which fills King Simeon with pride as the crowd cheers loudly for their admired champion and future ruler. The second round of the game begins, and this time Vanya plays even more aggressively as he forcefully knocks down his opponent, and as the coconut ball flies high into the air, Ian runs after it, and although Edward tries to stop him and pull him back, both of them lose their balance and tumble straight into the center of the arena. The coconut disappears from sight, and the crowd quickly turns restless as the monkeys begin blaming the 2 outsiders for ruining the match, while Edward struggles to explain that his friend does not mean any harm and only acts out of confusion rather than malice. While the tension rises, Edward notices that the missing coconut has rolled into a narrow opening, and using a stick along with sticky tar, he cleverly retrieves it and steps forward, holding his invention with confidence. The simpler members of the tribe stare in amazement at the unusual device he has created, and even Vanya approaches to take back the ball, though Edward sees this as an opportunity to suggest a new idea for the game by proposing that another skull could be hung so that teams could compete together instead of individually. As they speak, the witch and Vladimir quietly observe Edward and suddenly notice a short toe on his foot, which immediately reveals to them that this intelligent and inventive monkey is actually the king's son. Meanwhile, Vanya refuses to consider any changes to the traditional rules and attempts to restart the match by tossing the coconut upward, yet his hand remains stuck to the tar-covered surface. And when the other monkeys rush to help him, each pulling in different directions, the coconut suddenly flies free and shoots upward before landing directly on King Simeon's head. Vladimir quickly pulls the sticky ball away, but in doing so, he also tears off a large patch of the king's hair, leaving a noticeable bald spot on the top of his head. Humiliated and furious, Simeon demands that someone provide fur to cover his baldness, but since no monkey volunteers, the tribe decides that the inventor of the glue must sacrifice his own hair instead. The king orders that the boy's name be given, and that he be brought before him later, while Vladimir, shaken by the unexpected turn of events, rushes to the witch's dwelling to seek advice. Inside her dark shelter, filled with skulls and bones, he trembles with fear and insists that he truly threw the baby to the predator years ago and has no idea how the child survives. Yet the witch, angered by his weakness, drives him away with harsh curses. From the shadows, Vanya overhears their conversation, and when he steps forward, the witch reveals the truth about his twin brother's survival, which fills him with rage so intense that the witch must dodge his angry strikes before calmly offering her assistance in dealing with the situation. After Vanya leaves, the witch uses her magic to summon grasshoppers, planning to use them as part of a scheme to finally eliminate Edward. Unaware of this danger, Ian and Edward return to their home, and after a moment, 2 monkeys sent by Vladimir arrive, including his balding brother Sergei and a large and clumsy monkey named Marcel. And while Ian hides in fear, Edward is captured along with his belongings and taken back to the tribe. Edward is brought before King Simeon, who still blames him for the embarrassing bald spot, yet thinking quickly, Edward uses leaves and twigs to craft a simple crown that neatly covers the king's head, and when the tribe gasps in admiration at Simeon's grand new appearance, the king himself becomes pleased with the transformation. Only Vanya and the witch remain dissatisfied, watching silently as Edward continues searching for more ways to impress the king. Soon, Edward discovers a large lily filled with water and cleverly uses it to create a mirror, showing Simeon his own reflection for the first time. And although the king initially reacts with fear at the sight of what he believes is a rival, he soon becomes fascinated with his own image. Encouraged by this success, Edward then constructs a throne from strong vines and enormous leaves, allowing the king to sit comfortably while observing the borders of his kingdom from above. However, this moment of pride and comfort is suddenly shattered when a swarm of locusts sent by the witch descends upon the area, creating chaos and panic among the tribe. And as the insects swarm everywhere, the vines supporting the throne snap under pressure, causing Simeon to fall from a great height. Seizing the opportunity, the witch loudly accuses Edward of causing the king's fall and declares that he must be punished for killing him, turning the frightened crowd against the very monkey who only seeks acceptance. Blinded by anger and jealousy, Vanya grabs his brother by the neck and throws him off the edge of the cliff, while Ian watches in shock and helpless horror as Edward's body falls toward the ground below. At the same time, Simeon surprisingly survives the earlier fall and manages to climb back up to the tribe, and when he realizes that the young inventor has been punished unfairly, he becomes furious. Yet before he can act further, events below begin to unfold on their own, because Edward lies unconscious on the ground, and predators start moving closer to devour him. Ian rushes down toward the lower branches, desperately trying to reach his friend, but he cannot stretch far enough to pull him to safety. After some time, Edward regains consciousness, although he feels dizzy and weak. And since he cannot climb the tree with only one working arm, he decides to head toward the open savanna, where he encounters 2 enormous ostriches. When he tries to grab a bunch of grapes from one of their beaks, he instinctively straightens his body and rises to his full height. And in that moment, he accidentally discovers that he can stand upright on 2 legs. Excited by this realization, he experiments with balancing himself. Yet his discovery is quickly interrupted by the arrival of a pack of wolves, which causes the ostriches to flee at great speed. Edward attempts to escape as well, and although at first he can only manage to move awkwardly backward on his two legs, he continues trying while the monkeys watching from the trees cheer in surprise at the sight of the supposedly weak inventor once again fighting for survival. Observing the ostriches carefully, Edward understands how to adjust his movement and shifts his balance forward, allowing himself to run properly on his straightened legs, and soon he becomes surprisingly fast and agile. For the first time in his life, his useless arm does not slow him down, and the wolves struggle to catch him as he skillfully changes direction. The fleeing ostriches zigzag through a herd of massive rhinos in an attempt to escape, and Edward follows them, which causes the enormous animals to panic and charge toward the ape tree. These rhinos, ancient ancestors of armadillos, instinctively curl into heavy balls just before crashing into the tribe's home. Faced with destruction, Simeon leaps down alone to defend both the tribe and the son he once rejected, and although he bravely pushes several rhinos aside with his great strength, the sheer force of the herd overwhelms him and knocks him down. The sacred tree trembles violently from the impact, but manages to remain standing, unlike Simeon, who lies mortally wounded. With his final strength, he shields Edward with his body, and as his life fades, he apologizes for trying to cast him away, and finally acknowledges him as his true heir. Edward, who has always lived as an outcast, struggles to fully understand the meaning of these words, and during this moment of hesitation, Vanya quickly takes control of the situation by lifting their father's body and warning his fragile brother not to even think about claiming the kingdom. As Edward stands beside the simple crown of leaves lying on the ground, the witch prepares to present Vanya as the new king, while Vladimir praises the prince excessively in hopes of keeping his position, yet Vanya replaces him with Sergei instead. The newly crowned ruler steps before the tribe and is invited to choose a mate, and he declares from a raised platform formed by other monkeys that he will preserve their ancient way of life and maintain the same traditions as his father, which earns loud applause from the crowd. The witch then urges him to perform one of the oldest rituals by consuming his father's body to inherit his wisdom, and as Vanya prepares to follow through, Edward steps forward, not to fight for power, but to return the lost crown, which Vanya places upon Simeon's body. Edward questions the meaning of such cruel customs, and proposes that they bury the king instead, yet the witch insists that breaking tradition will bring disaster, because only through this ritual can a father's wisdom pass to his son. Rejecting her dramatic warnings, Edward openly challenges the practice and announces that from this moment forward, they will no longer eat their fathers, although Vanya refuses to yield until a sudden flash of lightning and a crash of thunder frighten him into stopping. As a violent storm erupts, the monkeys scatter for shelter, leaving Edward alone beside his father's body until Ian joins him, and together they push Simeon's body down from the tree to prepare a proper burial. Though Ian hesitates to climb down the vines, Edward convinces him, and they place a large flat stone over the fallen king in a simple act of respect. Nearby, lightning strikes a small tree and sets it ablaze, and Edward approaches the strange glowing flame with curiosity, attempting to grasp it with his hand, only to pull back in pain from the burn. Mistaking the sensation as if the fire has bitten him, he strikes it with a stick, which then catches fire itself, leaving him holding a flaming torch in amazement. However, heavy rain soon extinguishes the flame, and in the distance, a massive tornado begins forming across the desert. The frightened monkeys hide within the tree and cruelly send Vladimir out into the open, where he is swept away by the swirling vortex along with other unlucky creatures. Edward is also caught in the storm and tossed violently through the air, and within the chaos he notices a beautiful female monkey desperately clinging to a branch. He reaches out and nearly grabs her, but another powerful gust hurls him away, and she is thrown out shortly after, landing unconscious on a narrow ledge where she risks falling into the abyss below. Determined to save the unconscious girl, Edward ties himself securely to a tree and carefully lowers himself down toward the narrow ledge where she lies. And although the violent wind suddenly lifts both of them back into the raging sky, he refuses to release his grip on her even for a moment. Ian quickly reacts by grabbing a torn vine at just the right time, and with great effort, even using only one working arm, Edward manages to pull the girl safely out of the abyss. However, as soon as she regains consciousness, she immediately slaps him, clearly confused and defensive. Edward comes to know that the hurricane has swept her entire family into the abyss and tries to show sympathy, yet the wild and frightened girl responds by biting him before running away, unwilling to trust anyone. Edward refuses to give up and chases after her, forcing himself to overcome one dangerous obstacle after another, and despite exhaustion, he eventually catches up to the girl and climbs a steep cliff alongside her. After overcoming so many challenges, Edward collapses to the ground, completely drained, and to his surprise, the girl calmly introduces herself as Lucy. Shocked and frustrated, Edward complains about all the hardships he endures while she pretends not to understand him, yet Lucy quickly softens his frustration by curiously sniffing him, and soon afterward she learns from him how to stand upright on 2 legs. Soon, they grow closer and form a friendship. Edward shares the story of his royal lineage and lonely upbringing, and Lucy wonders why someone of such heritage lives as an outcast. Later, beside the river of lava, Edward lights a stick once more and experiments with fire, and carrying a burning torch, he approaches the tree where the tribe sleeps. The monkeys wake in panic, believing the volcano itself has sent flames to destroy them, yet the witch quickly recognizes Edward's presence as he returns to the tribe with his discovery. This time, Edward proposes using fire to drive away predators, and the tribe watches in amazement as he demonstrates its power. Vanya interrupts, attempting to frighten him away with warnings about the dangerous flame, but Edward, eager to impress further, divides the fire and offers torches to others. Unfortunately, some burning sticks fall dangerously close to the tree, threatening to set their home ablaze, and the witch orders the strangers to be chased away with stones and sticks. Sergei becomes interested in Lucy and tries to drag her up the tree, yet Edward leaps forward and burns him with the torch, rescuing her before they both flee from the furious crowd. As night falls and predators signal their presence, Edward boldly heads toward the cave of the wolves, claiming it as shelter with surprising confidence, and he and Lucy settle inside. When they nearly lose control of the torch, they panic at first, unsure how to manage the flames, but Edward regains composure and invents a fire pit surrounded by stones to contain the danger. Lucy watches him with admiration as he jumps from minor burns, and their growing affection leads them to invent a kiss. From the branches above, the other monkeys observe the romantic scene illuminated by the large shadow cast by the bonfire, and they begin imitating the couple, which makes Vanya and the witch realize that their influence is weakening. The next morning, Lucy teaches Edward how to throw flat stones to knock down fruit and hunt animals. Watching from above, the tribe grows increasingly envious, and when the smell of roasted meat fills the air, the monkeys can no longer resist. The witch attempts to frighten them by producing a terrifying howl through a hollow cavity, pretending that angry spirits speak. Yet one of the young monkeys discovers the trick and reveals that the tree spirits are imaginary, and that no higher powers are punishing them. Enraged by the deception, the tribe pelts the witch with stones and begins climbing down to join Edward and Lucy, although Vanya stops Sergei and Marcel from leaving, and only the witch and a devoted follower remain loyal to him. When the tribe approaches, Lucy feels hurt by their earlier hostility and drives them away, yet Edward, who has waited long for acceptance, persuades her to allow them to stay. Hoping to become a leader who changes their way of life, he offers a compromise in which every monkey must work together if they wish to remain. Over days and weeks, the tribe gradually builds a new life among the rocks under Edward's guidance, while Vanya continues ruling an increasingly empty kingdom as the witch secretly plans revenge. As time passes, Lucy and Edward prepare to welcome a child, and when discussing names, Lucy rejects one suggestion and instead chooses the name Ian in honor of Edward's loyal friend who once saved her husband's life. Meanwhile, the tribe engages in large construction projects, and life flourishes as more monkeys begin using intelligence and cooperation for the benefit of the entire community, rather than relying solely on strength and tradition. One day, a massive swarm of locusts sent by the witch descends upon the settlement, and the insects quickly destroy buildings and reduce the hard work of the tribe to rubble. Edward tries to calm everyone and restore order, but Sergei instead fuels anger and urges the monkeys toward violence. Lucy advises Edward to hurry and reach the tree before the furious crowd arrives, and riding on the back of a wolf, he reaches the sacred tree ahead of them. However, Vanya does not immediately respond to his warnings, and soon the armed tribe arrives carrying torches and spears, ready to cut down the tree despite arguments that it remains essential for their survival. At last, Vanya emerges from hiding, and Sergei offers him a chance to surrender the tree in exchange for safe passage, yet the king firmly refuses. The monkeys begin hacking at the tree's roots, and Vanya fiercely defends his home, proving that in direct combat, he remains nearly unbeatable, though Sergei manages to strike him with a burning torch. Vanya cries out in pain but knocks the weapon away, and the scattered flames quickly spread from the vines to the massive tree itself. As chaos erupts and the fire grows, Vanya's mate, Gudul, becomes trapped by surrounding flames, and Edward quickly acts by tying one end of a vine around himself and the other to the wolf, forcing the animal to run in the opposite direction so he can swing upward and rescue her. Despite saving her, Edward realizes the tree cannot be saved, yet he still tries to protect Vanya, who is being attacked with sticks by the crowd. Suddenly, a burning branch crashes down and pins Edward beneath it, and although he cries out for help, panic overwhelms the tribe, and they scatter in fear as the tree continues burning. Vanya, however, refuses to abandon his brother and returns to carry him away just before the tree explodes, taking the witch with it. The two brothers escape without looking back at the destruction of their former home. Later, standing before the ashes, Edward apologizes for the disaster, but Vanya accepts responsibility as well, and when asked how he will move forward, the once proud warrior awkwardly attempts to stand upright on two legs, signaling his willingness to change. In that moment, the brothers share their first genuine embrace, and their wives join them while the tribe slowly regains its senses. Although the monkeys celebrate the reconciliation of Simeon's sons, Sergei once again spreads worry by pointing out that they now lack both shelter and food. Observing birds flying south, Edward suggests that they migrate and search for new lands, yet his voice is lost in the noise of the crowd until Vanya lets out a powerful roar that restores silence. United at last, the brothers guide the tribe away from the ruins and lead them as nomads across new territories filled with forests, rivers, and mountains, rich in resources. In these lands, they unexpectedly reunite with Ian, who somehow arrives there ahead of them, and the joyful and eccentric friend greets Edward by tossing him high into the air in celebration of their survival and new beginning.